The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room that Commander Daniel had ever seen. It stretched upward for nearly a mile, with floating platforms arranged in circles that rose toward a ceiling of living crystal. Each platform held representatives from a different alien species. There were thousands of them, and Daniel felt very small as he sat in the observer section with his fellow humans. He had been in space for 12 years now. He had seen many strange things, but nothing prepared him for this moment. A holographic image appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a planet with brown and orange continents and thin blue oceans. The image was beautiful, but Daniel could see something wrong. The sun behind the planet pulsed with an angry red light. It was dying, and when it died, it would take everything with it. A voice spoke through the translation device in Daniel's ear. The speaker was Ambassador from the planet 7. The ambassador was in being, about 4 feet tall, with delicate wings folded against a thin body. Large compound eyes reflected the light of the hologram. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," said. The voice was soft and carried great sadness. "I come before you today to beg for the lives of my people. Our sun has entered its death phase. Our scientists tell us we have 18 standard months before it expands and destroys our world. 2 billion of my people will die unless we can evacuate them." The hall was silent. Daniel leaned forward in his seat. Beside him, Lieutenant Maria watched with wide eyes. She was young, only 28, but she had a sharp mind and a good heart. Daniel valued her opinion more than most admirals he knew. "This is bad," Maria whispered. "Really bad." Daniel nodded but said nothing. He wanted to hear what the council would do. Ambassador continued speaking. "We do not have enough ships. We have only small vessels for local travel. We never developed faster than light engines because we never needed them. We were happy on our world. We never wished to leave it." The ambassador's wings trembled slightly. Daniel recognized the gesture as their species' way of showing deep emotion. "We are not a wealthy people. We cannot pay for rescue. We have only our gratitude and our friendship to offer. Please, I beg you, help us save our children." The hologram showed images of the people. They were gentle beings who lived in great garden cities. They spent their lives growing food and creating art. Daniel saw their young, small creatures with bright eyes who played in fields of purple flowers. He saw their elders, teaching wisdom to new generations. He saw a civilization that had existed for 20,000 years, and he felt something tighten in his chest. The first response came from the delegation. There were tall reptilian beings with scales of deep green. They controlled the largest military fleet in the galaxy. Their ambassador rose and spoke in a cold voice. "The Dominion sympathizes with the plight of 7. However, the cost of such an evacuation would be enormous. Our resources are committed to defending our borders against external threats. We cannot spare the ships or the fuel for this operation. We vote against intervention." Daniel felt his hands form into fists. Maria touched his arm gently, warning him to stay calm. The next speaker was from the Confederacy. There were beings of living light, contained in special suits that let them interact with solid matter. Their voice hummed like electricity. They agree with the assessment. Furthermore, 7 is located in a remote sector far from major trade routes. The logistics of such a rescue would strain our fleet beyond acceptable limits. We also vote against intervention. One by one, the major powers gave their answers. The claimed their ships were too valuable. The said that had no resources worth saving. The suggested that perhaps nature was simply taking its course. Each refusal hit Daniel like a physical blow. He had studied history. He knew that humans had done terrible things to each other throughout the centuries, but he had always believed that the galaxy would be different. He had thought that species who could travel between stars would be wiser and more compassionate. He was wrong. The final vote was called. Of the 47 voting members of the Galactic Council, 43 voted against helping 7. 2 abstained. Only 2 small species voted in favor, and their voices counted for nothing. Ambassador stood alone on the speaking platform. The swings had gone completely still, which Daniel now understood meant profound grief. Tears, or something like tears, fell from those large compound eyes. "Then we are abandoned," said quietly. 2 billion souls, and you leave us to burn." No one answered. The representatives of the great powers were already preparing to leave, their minds already on other matters. To them, 7 was simply a small problem that would solve itself in 18 months. When the planet burned, they would not lose sleep over it. Daniel stood up suddenly. Maria grabbed his arm. "Daniel, what are you doing?" she hissed. "We are observers only. We have no vote. We have no voice here." "Then maybe it is time we found one," Daniel said. He walked to the edge of the human observation platform. He was breaking protocol. Observers were not allowed to speak, but something inside him could not stay silent. "Ambassador," he called out. They looked up. So did many of the other representatives. Some of them seemed confused, others seemed annoyed. The human species was still new to the galactic community. They had only been members for 40 years, barely a heartbeat by galactic standards. "Who speaks?" asked. "Commander Daniel of the United Earth Space Fleet," he replied. "I just wanted you to know that not everyone in this hall agrees with this decision. I wanted you to know that I am sorry." His compound eyes focused on him. Daniel could not read alien expressions well, but he thought he saw something like surprise. "Your words are kind, human," the ambassador said, "but words cannot save my people." "No," Daniel agreed, "they cannot." He looked around the great hall at all the powerful species who had just condemned 2 billion innocent beings to death. He felt anger, but he also felt something else. Determination. "Maybe something else can," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. When Daniel returned to his seat, Maria was looking at him with a mixture of concern and admiration. "That was either very brave or very stupid," she said. "Probably both," Daniel admitted. "But I cannot let this go. I cannot just watch while a whole civilization dies and do nothing." "What can we do?" Maria asked. "Earth's fleet is tiny compared to we do not have the ships or the resources." Daniel looked back at the hologram of 7, which still floated in the center of the hall. He looked at the dying sun and the doomed planet and the 2 billion people who had just been told their lives did not matter. "I do not know yet," he said, "but I am going to find a way, even if I have to build the ships myself, even if I have to fly them alone. Someone has to help them." Maria studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Not alone," she said. "If you are doing this, I am coming with you." Daniel smiled for the first time that day. It was a small smile, but it was real. The great hall emptied as the alien representatives left for their comfortable ships and their safe worlds. Ambassador departed last, moving slowly, carrying the weight of a dying civilization on thin shoulders. But Daniel remained in his seat, watching and thinking and planning. He did not know how, but he made a silent promise to himself and to those 2 billion strangers. He would find a way to help them, no matter what it cost. The flight back to Earth took 3 weeks. Daniel spent every hour of that time working on a plan. He did not sleep much. He did not eat much. Maria brought him food and coffee and forced him to rest when he could no longer think clearly, but his mind kept returning to those 2 billion faces he had never met. When their small ship landed at the United Earth Space Command headquarters in Geneva, Daniel requested an immediate meeting with Admiral Monroe. She was the highest-ranking officer in the entire fleet, a woman of 60 years with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Admiral Monroe listened to Daniel's report without interruption. She sat behind her desk, hands folded, face calm. When he finished speaking, she remained silent for a long moment. "So the council refused to help," she said finally. Completely, Daniel replied. They did not even discuss alternatives. They just voted no and moved on to other business. The admiral stood and walked to the window. Outside, the Swiss mountains stood tall and white against a blue sky. She had grown up in these mountains. She had learned to climb them before she learned to fly ships. "And you want Earth to do something about it," she said. "Yes, Admiral, I know it seems impossible. I know our fleet is small, but I cannot accept that there is nothing we can do." Turned to face him, her expression was hard to read. "Do you know why I joined the Space Fleet, Commander?" "No, Admiral." "Because when I was a little girl, I watched videos of the first contact with alien life. I saw those great ships coming down from the sky. I thought that joining the galactic community meant we would learn from older and wiser species. I thought they would teach us how to be better." She walked back to her desk and sat down heavily. "Instead, we learned that the galaxy is just as cold and selfish as humanity ever was, maybe more so. These species have lived for millions of years, and they have learned nothing about compassion." Daniel felt hope rising in his chest. "Then you understand why we have to act." "I understand why you want to act," the Admiral corrected. "But wanting and doing are different things. I need to speak with the planetary government. This decision is bigger than just the military." The meeting of Earth's leadership took place 3 days later in the Global Assembly Building in New York. Representatives from every nation sat in the Great Circular Chamber. Admiral Monroe presented the situation with cold facts and clear numbers. The debate that followed was heated. Senator from the North American Federation was the first to object. He was a large man with a loud voice, and he used it to make sure everyone heard his concerns. "We cannot afford this," he declared. "Earth has its own problems. We have colonies that need resources. We have infrastructure that needs repair. Why should we spend everything we have on aliens we have never met?" Doctor, the head of the Xenobiology Division, responded calmly. She was a small woman with dark skin and kind eyes, but her voice carried the weight of deep conviction. "Senator, I understand your concerns about resources, but I ask you to consider something else. Humanity has been a member of the galactic community for 40 years. In that time, we have been treated as children, as primitives, as a species not worth attention. Every major power looks down on us." She paused and looked around the chamber. "This is our chance to show them who we really are. This is our chance to prove that humanity is not just another selfish species fighting for power. This is our chance to be something better." Another senator, Lisa from the Asian Coalition, raised a practical concern. "Even if we wanted to help, do we have the capability? The number 2 billion. How can we possibly evacuate that many people?" Captain stepped forward. He was a young officer with a reputation for creative thinking. He had spent the last 3 days working with engineers and logistics experts to answer exactly this question. "We have calculated several options," he said. "Our military fleet consists of 47 combat vessels, most of which have limited cargo space. However, Earth also has a merchant fleet of over 300 civilian cargo haulers. If we repurpose these ships with emergency life support systems, we can increase our passenger capacity significantly." He activated a holographic display showing the proposed modifications. "Additionally, our engineers have designed modular habitation units that can be manufactured quickly and attached to the exterior of larger vessels. These units are simple but effective. They can keep people alive for the journey." Senator was not satisfied. And how long would this journey take? How much fuel would it require? Who pays for all of this? Captain answered honestly. "The journey to 7 takes approximately 3 months each way. We would need to make multiple trips. The fuel costs would be enormous. As for payment, we would need to redirect funds from other programs. There would be sacrifices." The chamber erupted in argument. Some representatives shouted about priorities. Others demanded more information. A few sat quietly, thinking about what kind of species humanity wanted to be. Admiral Monroe let the argument continue for 10 minutes. Then she stood and raised her hand for silence. "Ladies and," she said firmly, "I have heard your concerns. They are valid. This mission will cost us resources we can barely spare. It will strain our fleet to the breaking point. Some of our people may not come home." She paused and looked at the faces around her. "But I ask you to think about this. 40 years ago, when we first made contact with alien life, we hoped the galaxy would welcome us. We hoped to find wisdom and kindness among the stars. We found neither. The elder races looked at us and saw only primitives." Her voice grew stronger. "Now we have a chance to show them something they have never seen. A species that helps others not because it benefits them, but because it is right. A species that values life even when that life belongs to strangers. A species that proves wisdom and compassion are not weaknesses but strengths." She met the eyes of Senator directly. "If we do nothing, 2 billion innocent people will die. Their children will die. Their entire civilization will end. And we will have to live with the knowledge that we could have helped but chose not to. I do not know about you, Senator, but I cannot live with that." The chamber fell silent. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Doctor raised her hand. "I call for a vote." The voting took only minutes. When the results were displayed, Admiral Monroe allowed herself a small smile. 218 votes in favor, 97 against, 31 abstained. Earth would launch a rescue mission. The news spread across the planet within hours. Reaction was mixed. Some people protested, angry that their taxes would fund a rescue of aliens. Others celebrated, proud that humanity had chosen compassion over convenience. Volunteer recruitment centers opened the next morning. The lines stretched around city blocks. Young people and old people, civilians and veterans, scientists and laborers. They came from every nation and every background. They wanted to help. Daniel was placed in command of the mission fleet. Maria would serve as his first officer. Captain took charge of logistics. Doctor prepared medical teams for refugee care. In shipyards around the world, engineers worked day and night. They converted cargo holds into living spaces. They installed life support systems designed for alien biology. They built the modular habitation units that would carry thousands of refugees. Admiral Monroe visited the main shipyard in orbit above Earth. She walked among the workers, thanking them for their dedication. She watched as the flagship of the mission fleet, a large carrier vessel named Endurance, received its final modifications. "Do you think we can really do this?" Daniel asked her as they stood on the observation deck. The admiral watched the workers below, humans of every nation working together for a cause greater than themselves. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I know we have to try, and I know that whatever happens, the galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again." 2 weeks later, the fleet was ready. 112 vessels, from military frigates to converted cargo haulers, gathered in Earth orbit. Millions watched from the surface as the ships formed up and prepared to jump to hyperspace. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Endurance. Maria was beside him, along with their bridge crew. They were about to attempt something no one thought possible. "All ships report ready," Maria announced. Daniel nodded. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Commander. We are about to begin the largest rescue mission in human history. We are going to save 2 billion lives that the rest of the galaxy has abandoned. Some of us may not come back, but those who do will know they did something that mattered." He took a deep breath. "Begin jump sequence." The fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. Ahead lay a dying world and people who had lost all hope. Humanity was coming to help. The journey through hyperspace took 94 days. During that time, the crews of the human fleet prepared for the enormous task ahead. They studied the language and customs. They practiced setting up the modular habitation units. They ran drills for medical emergencies and crowd control. Daniel spent his nights reviewing the latest data from 7. The situation was growing worse. Temperatures on the planet had risen by 15 degrees since the council meeting. Crops were failing across entire continents. Sources were drying up. They were already dying, and the sun had not even begun its final expansion. On the 63rd day of the journey, the fleet encountered a patrol. 3 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace directly in the path of the human fleet. Each vessel was 5 times the size of the Endurance. Their weapons systems could destroy the entire human fleet in minutes. Daniel ordered all ships to halt. His heart was pounding, but his voice remained calm. "Open a channel to the commander," he ordered. The face that appeared on them was reptilian and cold. The captain had scales of dark green and eyes like yellow fire. "Human vessels," the captain said in a flat voice. "You are traveling towards 7. This system is under observation. State your purpose." Daniel stood straight and met those alien eyes directly. "I am Commander Daniel of the United Earth Space Fleet. We are on a humanitarian mission to evacuate the population of 7. The captain made a sound that might have been laughter. "The council voted against intervention. This matter is closed." "Earth is not bound by that vote," Daniel replied. "We were observers, not voting members. We have made our own decision." The captain's eyes narrowed. "You are a primitive species with a small fleet. You cannot succeed in this mission. You will waste your resources and accomplish nothing. Turn back now and save yourselves the trouble." Daniel felt anger rising in his chest, but he controlled it. "With respect, Captain, that is our choice to make. We are not asking for help. We are not asking for permission. We are simply going to do what is right." The captain stared at him for a long moment. Daniel could not read the alien expression, but he thought he saw something like confusion. "You would risk your ships and your lives for a species you have never met, a species that cannot pay you or help you in return." "Yes," Daniel said simply, "we would." The captain was silent. His officers exchanged glances behind him. This was clearly not the response they had expected. "You humans are strange creatures," the captain said finally. "I do not understand you." "Maybe that is the problem," Daniel replied quietly. "Maybe the galaxy has forgotten what it means to help others simply because they need help." The captain considered this. Then he made a gesture to his crew. "The Dominion will not interfere with your mission. We will not help you, but we will not stop you. Proceed at your own risk." The 3 warships moved aside, opening a path through space. Daniel let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "Thank you, Captain," he said. They did not respond. The went dark and the warships jumped away to hyperspace. Maria turned to Daniel with wide eyes. "I thought we were going to die," she admitted. "So did I," Daniel said, "but we did not, and now we have a mission to complete." The fleet continued on its journey. When they finally arrived at 7, the sight took Daniel's breath away. The planet had once been beautiful, covered in forests and gardens and great cities of crystal and stone. Now it looked sick. The atmosphere was hazy with dust and smoke. Massive fires burned across the continents. The oceans had shrunk, leaving dried and cracked seabeds exposed to a sun that had grown too large and too hot. The fleet entered orbit and began scanning for the largest population centers. Samuel Brooks, the chief engineer, reported that conditions on the surface were barely survivable for humans and dangerous even for the native. "We need to work fast," Samuel said. "The temperature is rising every day. If we wait too long, we will not be able to send ground teams at all." Daniel ordered the first shuttle wave to launch. 20 transport shuttles descended through the dusty atmosphere toward the capital city of He went down with the first wave. He needed to see the situation for himself. The city was a ruin of what it had once been. The beautiful crystal towers were cracked and falling. The gardens had died, leaving only bare earth and dead plants. The streets were filled with refugees from the surrounding areas, all desperate for food and water. And there, waiting at the landing site, was Ambassador. The swings were thin and damaged. The compound eyes were dull, had aged years in the months since the council meeting. Daniel walked forward and stopped a few feet from the ambassador. "We came," he said simply. His antennae trembled. The ambassador looked at the human shuttles, at the crews unloading supplies and medical equipment, at the strange aliens who had traveled so far to help strangers. "Why?" asked. The voice was barely a whisper. "Why did you come? We have nothing to offer you. We cannot pay you. We cannot help you in return. The council told us we were worthless." Daniel knelt so that he was at eye level with the ambassador. It was a gesture of respect in both human and culture. "You are not worthless," Daniel said firmly. "Every life has value. Every civilization matters. The council was wrong to abandon you. Earth decided to do what was right." Stared at him with those large compound eyes. Tears, or something like tears, began to flow. In 20,000 years of our history, no species has ever helped another without expecting something in return. We thought that was the way of the universe. We thought that was how all thinking beings behaved. Daniel smiled gently. "Humans are still young. Maybe we have not learned to be cold and calculating yet, or maybe we never will." He stood and gestured to the shuttles behind him. "We have 112 ships in orbit. We have medical teams and supplies. We are going to evacuate as many of your people as we can. It will not be comfortable. It will not be easy, but we will save everyone we can." Wings began to move again, slowly at first, then faster. Daniel had learned that this was a sign of hope. "How do we begin?" the ambassador asked. "We begin now," Daniel replied. "Take me to the largest refugee centers. Show me where the most vulnerable are. We will start with the children and the elderly." Over the next few hours, Daniel walked through the dying city. He saw the suffering of the people. He saw families huddled in damaged buildings, trying to escape the heat. He saw children too weak to play, sitting quietly and waiting for death. And he saw hope return to their eyes when they learned that the humans had come to save them. Dr. Mitchell set up a field hospital in one of the few buildings still standing. She and her medical teams worked without rest, treating dehydration and heat sickness and radiation exposure. "There are so many of them," said to Daniel as they watched refugees lining up for treatment. "More than we expected, more than we can handle." "We will handle them anyway," Daniel replied. "We have to." The first transport ships began loading refugees that same day. Samuel Brooks had modified the cargo holds to support life. The conditions were crowded and uncomfortable, but they were survivable. Daniel watched the first ship lift off, carrying 10,000 towards safety. 10,000 lives saved. 1,990,000,000 to go. He turned back to the ruined city and the dying planet. "We have 18 months, he said to Maria, who had joined him on the surface. "We need to move faster." Maria nodded and pulled out her communicator. "All ships, this is Lieutenant. Begin maximum evacuation protocols. We are not leaving anyone behind." The work was just beginning. The evacuation of 7 was the largest rescue operation in the history of both species. Human crews worked 18-hour shifts, loading refugees, flying shuttles, and maintaining equipment that was never designed for such constant use. The heat on the planet's surface increased every week. The work became harder. The stakes grew higher. Samuel Brooks performed miracles in the engineering bays. Engines failed and he fixed them. Life support systems broke down and he rebuilt them. When the power systems on 3 ships died at the same time, He worked for 40 hours straight to bring them back online. "How do you keep going?" Daniel asked him one night, finding the engineer still working while everyone else slept. Samuel wiped grease from his hands and shrugged. "Because every hour I work is another hour those refugees stay alive. Because if I stop, someone dies. That is not an option for me." Daniel understood completely. On the surface, Lieutenant Parker led the ground teams. He was a big man with strong arms and a gentle heart. Every day, he took his teams into the most dangerous areas, searching for survivors in collapsed buildings and isolated communities. One day, they found a school that had been cut off by a massive fire. 200 children and their teachers were trapped inside, surrounded by flames and heat that would kill them within hours. Did not hesitate. He led his team through the smoke and fire, carrying breathing equipment and protective suits. They found the children huddled in the center of the building, too frightened to move. Picked up 3 young in his arms. His team members did the same. They carried those children through fire and smoke and falling debris. They made 4 trips before the building finally collapsed. Every child and every teacher survived. When returned to the shuttle, his suit was burned and his skin was blistered, but he was smiling. "Good day today," he said simply. Communications officer coordinated the massive logistics of the evacuation. She tracked every refugee, every ship, every shuttle flight. She knew where 2 billion people were at any given moment. She solved problems before they became disasters. When a supply convoy got lost in an ash storm, she guided them to safety using only radio signals and mathematics. When 2 ships nearly collided during a difficult docking procedure, she talked both pilots through the maneuver with calm precision. "You are amazing," Maria told her one day. Just shook her head. "I am just doing my job. The amazing ones are the people down there, risking their lives every day." Pilot Alex flew more missions than any other shuttle pilot. He was young, only 25, but he had more skill than pilots twice his age. He flew through volcanic ash storms that would have destroyed lesser ships. He landed on unstable ground that shifted under his shuttle. He took risks that made other pilots refuse to follow. One mission took him to a coastal city that was flooding as the ocean levels changed. The city was sinking into the mud, and thousands were trapped on the rooftops. Alex landed his shuttle on a building that was barely stable. He loaded 200 refugees while the building swayed beneath him. When he lifted off, the building collapsed into the mud. He had escaped with seconds to spare. "You could have died," Daniel told him later. Alex just smiled. "But I did not, and 200 people are alive because I took the chance." As the months passed, the evacuation continued. The first ships reached Earth's colony worlds and unloaded their refugees. The colonies were not prepared for such numbers, but they adapted. Families opened their homes. Communities built temporary shelters. Food was rationed so everyone could eat. They were grateful beyond words. They had expected to die. Instead, they found a new home among strangers who asked nothing in return. But on 7, the situation grew worse. The sun expanded faster than anyone had predicted. The scientists had given them 18 months. Now they had only 14, then 12, then 10. Daniel pushed the fleet harder. Ships that should have rested continued flying. Crews that should have slept continued working. Everyone knew the cost of failure. Then tragedy struck. The transport vessel called the Hope's Light was one of the largest ships in the fleet. It carried 15,000 refugees when its main engine suffered a critical failure. Captain Ben Morales had commanded the Hope's Light for 3 years. He was a quiet man who loved his ship and his crew. When the engine failed, he knew immediately what it meant. The reactor was going to overload. When it did, the explosion would kill everyone on board. Ben ordered an emergency evacuation. Shuttles launched from the Hope's Light, carrying refugees to nearby ships, but there was not enough time. The reactor was failing too fast. Ben made a choice. He ordered his crew to evacuate with the refugees. He would stay behind and manually control the reactor, keeping it stable long enough for everyone to escape. His first officer refused to leave him. Ben looked at her with calm eyes. "Someone needs to fly those shuttles," he said. "Someone needs to take care of those people. That is your job now. Go." She went, with tears in her eyes she went. Ben stayed at his post. He watched the countdown on his screen as the shuttles launched one after another. He watched the temperature in the reactor climb higher and higher. He thought about his family back on Earth, his wife and his 2 children. He thought about the letter he had written them before leaving, just in case. "I love you all," he said quietly. The last shuttle launched with 1 minute to spare. Ben opened a channel to the Endurance. "Commander, this is Captain Morales. All refugees and crew have evacuated successfully. 15,000 lives saved. The reactor will overload in 30 seconds. It has been an honor." Daniel's voice came back immediately, rough with emotion. "The honor was ours, Captain. You will be remembered." Ben smiled as the world turned white around him. The explosion lit up the space around 7 for a brief moment. Then it was gone, and so was Ben Morales and his ship. The fleet observed a moment of silence. Then they returned to work, because that was what Ben would have wanted. In the weeks that followed, Daniel pushed himself even harder. He could not save Ben, but he could save others. He could make Ben's sacrifice mean something. The sun continued to grow. The planet's surface became too hot for human ground teams. Refugees could only be gathered at high-altitude locations where the temperature was barely survivable. Samuel rebuilt the shuttles with extra heat shielding, developed new treatments for heat stroke and radiation sickness, coordinated the final evacuation waves with perfect precision. And then, with only 3 weeks left before the sun expanded fully, Daniel made the hardest decision of his life. There were still millions on the surface. The fleet could not save them all. If they waited too long trying to rescue the last few, they would lose everything: the ships, the crews, and all the refugees already aboard. He had to call the final evacuation. Ambassador stood beside him on the bridge when he gave the order. "We have saved 83% of your people," Daniel said quietly. 1.7 billion souls, but I cannot save the rest. If we stay longer, we will all die." Santini drooped with sorrow, but the ambassador nodded slowly. "You have done more than anyone else would have done, more than we had any right to ask. We will mourn those we lost, but we will also celebrate those you saved." Daniel gave the order. The fleet began its final withdrawal. The shuttles launched from high mountain camps, carrying the last refugees they could reach. Below them, the cities burned. The forests turned to ash. The oceans boiled away. And through it all, the dying planet seemed to cry out for the children it could not save. The fleet jumped to hyperspace just as the sun began its final expansion. The shockwave chased them through the void, a wall of fire and energy that would have destroyed them all. But they were faster, they escaped. Behind them, 7 died in a blaze of light that would be visible across the galaxy. But its people lived on. The human fleet arrived at Earth's colony worlds with 1.7 billion refugees aboard. It was the largest migration in recorded galactic history. The colonies were overwhelmed, but they did not turn anyone away. On the planet called New Eden, the largest settlement began to take shape. The refugees worked alongside humans to build new homes and plant new gardens. There were master botanists, able to grow food in soil that humans had given up on. Within months, they had turned barren land into beautiful farms that fed both species. On other colonies, similar stories unfolded. They taught humans how to grow exotic plants and create medicines from natural materials. Humans taught the how to build machines and fly ships. Two species that had never met before became neighbors and friends. But not everyone was happy about what humanity had done. The Galactic Council summoned Earth's representatives to answer for acting without authorization. Daniel, now promoted to Admiral, traveled to Prime with Admiral Monroe to face the judgment of the galaxy. The Great Hall was exactly as Daniel remembered it. The floating platforms rose toward the crystal ceiling. The representatives of 1,000 species watched from their seats, and at the center of it all, the judges of the council waited to deliver their verdict. The ambassador spoke first. His green scales gleamed under the artificial lights, and his voice was cold with anger. The humans have violated galactic law. They conducted a military operation without council approval. They interfered in the affairs of a sovereign system. They must be punished. The representative added its voice, humming with electricity. The humans have set a dangerous precedent. If every minor species can act without permission, the galactic order will collapse. We demand sanctions against Earth. Daniel stood quietly and let them speak. Beside him, Admiral Monroe remained calm and composed. When the accusations were finished, Daniel was given a chance to respond. He stepped forward and looked up at the assembled representatives. He saw the faces of creatures who had watched 2 billion people condemned to death and done nothing. He felt anger, but he also felt pity. "The council is correct," he said clearly. "Earth acted without permission. We violated your rules. We did something you told us not to do." The representatives murmured among themselves. This was not the defense they had expected. "But I will not apologize for what we did," Daniel continued. "We saved 1.7 billion innocent lives. We rescued a civilization that had existed for 20,000 years. We did what you should have done but refused to do." The ambassador rose to object, but Daniel kept speaking. "I understand that the galaxy operates on cold calculation. Resources are limited. Power is everything. Species look out for themselves and let others die. I understand this, but I do not accept it." He turned slowly, looking at every platform, every face. "Humanity is young. We have only been among the stars for 40 years. You look at us and see primitives, children who do not understand how things work. But maybe that is our strength. Maybe we have not learned to be heartless yet." His voice grew stronger. "What does it mean to be a great civilization? Is it the size of your fleet, the power of your weapons, the wealth of your treasures? I think not. I think greatness is measured by how you treat those who cannot help you in return, by whether you reach out your hand to those who are falling or step aside and watch them fall." He pointed toward the empty observer section where he had once sat. 4 months ago, I sat in that seat and watched this council condemn 2 billion people to death. I watched the most powerful species in the galaxy shrug their shoulders and look away, and I felt ashamed to be part of this community. The hall was completely silent. But I am not ashamed anymore, because humanity chose differently. We chose to help. We chose to sacrifice. We chose to be something better than what the galaxy expected. He paused and met the eyes of the ambassador directly. "You can punish us if you want. You can impose sanctions. You can call us criminals, but you cannot undo what we did. 1.7 billion are alive because of us, and that is something that will never change." Daniel stepped back. He had said everything he wanted to say. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then something unexpected happened. A small voice came from one of the lower platforms. It belonged to a species of small furry beings who had no vote and no power in galactic affairs. "They would like to speak." The council president, a tall being of unknown species, seemed surprised. "They are not recognized members. They have no voice in these proceedings." "We claim the right of moral witness," the representative said firmly. "It is an old tradition from before the current council was formed. We claim it now." There was confusion among the senior members. The tradition was ancient, almost forgotten, but it was still technically valid. "The may speak," the president said reluctantly, the small furry being stood on its platform. "For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council has told smaller species that we must follow the rules. We must obey the great powers. We must accept their decisions, even when those decisions mean death for our people." This voice grew louder. "But the humans have shown us another way. They have shown us that it is possible to be good without being powerful. They have shown us that compassion is not weakness. They have proven that the rules can be changed." Other voices joined in. Another small species. The species without power, without fleets, without wealth. They all spoke in support of humanity. And then Ambassador rose from the platform. The ambassador had traveled to Prime specifically for this moment. His wings were still thin and damaged from the months on the dying planet, but the ambassador's voice was strong. "I speak for the people," said. "All 1.7 billion of us who live because of human kindness. We owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid." Turned to face the senior members of the council. "For 20,000 years, my people believed that the universe was cold and that no one would help us without expecting something in return. We believed that all species were selfish at heart. The council taught us this lesson when they abandoned us to die." His compound eyes focused on Daniel. "But then the humans came, young and small and supposedly primitive. They came to save strangers they had never met. They lost ships and crew members. They sacrificed everything they could spare, and then they sacrificed more, and they asked for nothing in return." His voice filled the great hall. "The humans taught us something the galaxy had forgotten. They taught us that goodness exists, that compassion is real, that it is possible to care about others simply because they need help." The ambassador paused. "This council can punish humanity if it chooses, but in doing so, it will only prove that the humans are better than all of us." The vote that followed was not what the and had expected. The great powers still wanted sanctions, but the smaller species, inspired by the ambassador's words, voted against them. For the first time in galactic history, the minor species outvoted the major powers. No sanctions were imposed on Earth. Instead, the Council issued a formal acknowledgement of humanity's humanitarian actions. It was a small victory. The great powers were still angry. Relations would be difficult for years to come. But something had changed in the galaxy. The smaller species now had hope. They had seen that it was possible to stand up to the powerful and win. They had seen that goodness could triumph over cold calculation. And they had seen that the humans, young and small and supposedly primitive, were perhaps the species of all. 5 years later, Admiral Daniel visited the settlement on New Eden. The colony had grown into a beautiful city of crystal towers and flowering gardens, and human children played together in the streets, speaking a mix of both languages. Maria walked beside him. They had married 2 years ago in a ceremony attended by representatives of both species. Their daughter, a bright-eyed girl named Hope, rode on Daniel's shoulders. Ambassador met them at the central plaza. The ambassador's wings had healed, and the compound eyes were bright again. "Welcome, old friend," said warmly. Daniel smiled and embraced the ambassador gently. "It is good to be here. It is good to see what you have built." They walked together through the gardens, showed them the new crops, the new medicines, the new technologies that they had developed in their new home. "We are happy here," said, "happier than we ever expected to be. Our old world is gone, but we have found something better. We have found family." Daniel looked at the children playing around them. Human children and children, running and laughing without any awareness of the differences between them. "That is what matters," he said. "That is what all of this was for." Nodded and then reached into a pouch and pulled out a small crystal. "We have created an honor for you," the ambassador said. "The highest honor our people can give. It is called the Light of Compassion. Only one has ever been awarded before, and that was 10,000 years ago." The ambassador placed the crystal in Daniel's hand. "You have earned this, you and all of humanity. You showed us that the universe is not as cold as we believed. You gave us hope when we had none." Daniel looked at the crystal. It glowed with a soft inner light, warm and constant. "Thank you," he said quietly, "but we did not do it for honors. We did it because it was right." Santini moved in the pattern that meant deep affection. "We know, that is why the honor means so much." That night, Daniel stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The lights of both species mingled below, creating a tapestry of colors that had never existed before. Maria joined him, carrying their sleeping daughter. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Daniel was silent for a moment. "I am thinking about the future," he said, "about what happens next, about the kind of galaxy we want to build." "And what do you think it will look like?" Daniel smiled and put his arm around his wife. "I think it will look like this. Different species, different cultures working together, helping each other, caring about each other not because it benefits them but because it is right." He looked up at the stars. "The great powers think they control the galaxy. They think that power and wealth are everything, but they are wrong. Compassion is stronger than they know. Kindness can change the universe." Somewhere out there, other species heard the story of the humans who had helped when no one else would. Other forgotten worlds began to hope that they were not alone. Other civilizations looked toward Earth and wondered if maybe, just maybe, the young species from the small blue world might help them too. And humanity answered. Because that was what humans did.